Hi, everybody. No Sleeves McGee here, and I just thought I'd say a few words about what you're about to listen to. Well, first of all, sorry about the sound quality. As we may know, we record over Skype, and for this recording, well, we had people from all over the world, 3 continents, 4 countries, and yeah, there was some issues there, and so sorry about that. The other thing I wanted to say is, while we sat down thinking we'd just roll through all the changes in Savage Worlds Black, the one found in Flash Gordon, because that's what you're about to listen to, but we ended up recording for about 2.5 hours, so I just thought I'd break this up into 3 episodes instead. So this first part is going to be about the skills, and after that we'll cover the rest, like combat options and optional rules and new states and miscellaneous things. So the episode is built a bit differently because of that, so keep that in mind when you're listening to it, that the next 3 episodes were recorded at the same time, but we wanted to make it so that it was more easily digested by you. Instead of having to listen to 2.5 hours straight, then now you have to listen to shorter episodes, 45 minutes to 50 minutes each. With that said, yeah, we had Gary, Manuel, we invited Paris Conte back on the show. And for this episode, unfortunately, Harrison could not make it. Too bad, and especially lacking his audio and technical skills. But yeah, enjoy the show.
Those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prime.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all Nerds International. With the hyphen. Nerds International proudly presents.
We want to take you on a quest for knowledge. One that will take us from ancient medieval fantasy across the far reaches of space to the distant future. To many savage worlds.
Welcome to the Wild Eye Podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to Pinnacle Entertainment's Savage Worlds, aimed at beginners and veterans alike. What's going on there, Lamoureux, my wheel man, my mouse man, my sugar buns?
You're making me blush, Gary. What a way to start a show, huh? Episode 47, Savage Black. We're a bit behind. A bunch of people have already discussed the new changes. But anyway, to discuss this very topic, here with us, we've got Paris Conte.
G'day guys, how are you? Good evening here. How are we all?
Good day, mate.
G'day, mate. I love the way you guys do that. G'day.
What time is
shrimp on the barbie?
I was just
heard that one before.
I was just gonna ask. How's Crocodile Dundee doing these days?
Good, I think. Oh, actually, if you've seen his face, it's he's had a lot of plastic surgery. He looks more like the doll that came out at the same time as the movie.
No Harrison today, unfortunately. Scheduling conflict, so can't make it. But we got the rest of the crew, and with all that discussion that we got for today, I think it's going to be a good show. Well, what we've been up to, playing games. I know, Manuel, you still running your Rippers, right?
Rippers is going great so far. I think we are 5 or 6 sessions in, had another coworker join in, so now I've got a table of 5 if everybody can make it. And we are playing the original Rippers campaign with the Rippers Resurrected rules, which works really nice. So it should be some adjustments to be made for the campaign, but to explain that, I would need to release spoilers for the old campaign, so I can't do that. So if you're planning to run the original Rippers campaign with Rippers Resurrected rules, you're going to have to make some adjustments. Just read the plot point campaign and you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so far running really good. Also going to pick up an ETU campaign at work at the start of May, because more people are interested in playing now. So I've already got another table of 3, which are probably going to expand to another table of 5. So 2 campaigns I'm going to be running at work, 1 Rippers and 1 ETU. Degrees of Horror, have already read through it. Really cool campaign, looking very much forward to it. And speaking of ETU, I think Paris has something for that as well.
Yeah, funnily enough, I'm running Degrees of Horror as well, with my group at work, the young adults that I do the skill building work with, and they actually picked the setting. And I have to admit that when I first looked at it, ETU just didn't speak to me at all. I just didn't feel it, but they were adamant, so we got started. And I got to tell you, I have turned around on that game so much. We have had such a ball with it. And there are so many things within the game that a lot of random charts and stuff to do with curses. And we've had more fun from someone passing their exam and finding a note in a book saying that someone was going to be murdered on Saturday. And it's just turned into this massive session where they had to keep a girl alive for 10 hours because a demon was stalking it. And funnily enough, the combat is not the thing that's attracting these guys. It's all the interactions between the characters and the laughs they're having by being stereotypical Americans at university. It's a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun with it.
So it's your way of poking fun at the US?
Well, no. Well, I mean, I do like what I think is a stereotypical Texan accent for half the characters, which I'm pretty bad at. But I don't know, these guys, because a lot of the guys that are doing the game with me, they haven't advanced that far at school, or they've never really had that sort of boyfriend-girlfriend relationships in terms of the whole dating scene and that kind of thing. And so we've worked a lot of that into the game, and they've had a chance to explore sides of society or sides of life that they haven't had a chance to. So the whole hunting of demons and trying to stay alive, and trying to drive a car down a freeway with the captain of the lacrosse team missing an arm and his arm in a cooler in the back and a demon chasing them. That's kind of secondary fun compared to all the fun they have passing exams and just goofing off around the university campus.
If that game was to win an award, it would be for like the biggest sleeper. Because when we played it, I was the same thing. I was like, man, ETU, what, really? Playing like high school kids and stuff like that, it just was not appealing. And then once you get into it, it is just like balls to the wall fun. It is so good. Yeah, super, super good sleeper game.
Well, I was just going to say, when you think Savage Worlds, you expect a lot of action and a lot of combat, and you wouldn't think it'd be fun to play something where it's mostly role play and investigation. It's about the interaction between the characters. They're real grounded characters, and I think that's what makes it fun.
Well, it's funny because back when ETU got kickstarted and released, I was one of the guys. I read through it. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be so amazing. Because I had a look at it and it just looked so different from all the other settings that got released at that time. And it just, because it wasn't focused on combat, they actually advise you to give your characters nothing higher than a D8 in the skills they are really competent in, because you are going to play university students. And so there would be a whole different mindset behind playing the characters you are going to be playing. And then, of course, with all the great mechanics, simulating school life with all the ups and downs and heartbreak and whatnot. And I was like, I want to play this. And I was really sad that I couldn't find a group. So I'm a ton of excitement right now to finally be able to play that.
I think where ETU really shines is the small nuances under the hood, especially when it comes to things like the hindrances and stuff like that. We've just by adding a hindrance like the curse. I've got one character, you draw a card every time for a new session. They can go anything from stinking really badly to having a runny nose to every electronic device around them fails. Most of their cars have all got some sort of quirky thing. They're either pulled to the left or there's another car out there that has someone that looks like them, so the cops is actually chasing the character for no real reason that's their fault. There's been so many amazing character developments in this game just by random stuff that was picked up out of the book. And I think we've got through only the first or second section of Degrees of Blood, or whatever the campaign's called, and most of it has just been stuff that's led off random dice rolls for passing exams and hindrances.
Nice. What about you, Gary? You running any Savage Worlds? No?
Not running anything.
I don't think you are, huh?
No. I've been sick the last couple of weeks. I got strep throat. It's very exciting. So, yeah. I was in the hospital Sunday last week, if you want to take the show on a real downer of a bum note. I woke up in the morning and I couldn't breathe, couldn't swallow. Had a bit of a panic attack. And, into the hospital that I went. So, multiple antibiotics, et cetera, and I'm super contagious. So, fortunately, we're continents apart. And you guys won't get my stuff.
Wow.
Good. Yeah. Feel safe.
Do you?
Yeah, I've got the good firewall.
Good fun. All right. So with that said, we'll dive right into the meat of the show. Like I said, we took a look at Savage Flash Gordon, where some of the rule changes to the core rules are located. They make their first appearance in that book. So we looked at that, and I wanted to wait till we played one game using these new rules so we could, offer our opinion on it, even though it was just one game and not every changes were brought in. But anyway, Manuel, Harrison, and we played in the game last week, GM by Scott Woodard, the writer of the game. So that was pretty amazing. And but yeah, everybody's looked at the rules, the changes. So we're gonna go through them. In case you don't know what they are, if you already know what they are, at least you'll get to hear our opinion, comments, or whatever on it. So. All right, so take it to the edge. Let's look at these changes. First, we've got the skills. So there are a couple of skills that were just put together, mixed together in a bundle, and with a new name. The first one is climbing, swimming, and throwing becomes athletics, and there's quite a few uses for athletics in the setting. And I'm gonna say that right now these changes are only in Flash Gordon. Shane already indicated that these changes were gonna make it to the core rules, but I would imagine there might be changes and that type of thing. So it's still speculation. When the actual book, the new edition, right now it's called Black, but they said it wasn't going to be the final name, but whatever name it is, when it's out, we'll have another episode and go through it. But yeah, these three together, and of course, athletics now can be used for chases, and it becomes the skill you use for grappling. Grappling has gone through some changes, and then you add throwing to this. But I'm reading Accursed right now for a review, and I think that was one of the first books. First settings to put climbing and swimming together and make it athletics, and I didn't have a problem with it because I don't know about you guys, but usually these skills are rarely used in the games I run. They rarely come up, but now you add throwing into that mix, and it's a combat skill, so. I don't know. Do you guys worry that maybe this will become one of the go-to skills where everybody takes it because you can do chases, you can do grappling, you can do climbing, swimming, and you can throw, grenades or throwing knives and all that? Maybe Paris first?
Yeah, my first thought, I think, when I saw it, it's funny, when it came out and I was reading it, we were actually playing a fantasy game at the time through Savage Worlds. And we had one character in there that was, a demon with throwing daggers. They were just awesome at it. They'd pumped all these points into throwing. And as I look through and later on, we'll see that the other skill change is thievery. I get the impression from both of those that they looked at the dexterous classes, or like everything was sort of fighting and strength and full on, but those that were sort of more nimble and athletic maybe they felt there was something missing there, or too many points spread across trying to make a nimble enough character, whereas a strength-based character was sort of you could go all into fighting and that's about it. Fighting and brawny for your edge, and happy days, you were the strong man. But the thief or the spy or whatever would have to take so many skills to try and catch up. I felt maybe that's why they did it. I'm actually quite happy that they've started condensing. I'm hoping they do more.
Yeah, I have
more
to
condensing.
Yeah.
What do you think, Gary?
Same. I have to agree, especially since I've started looking into ICRPG. I know this isn't that podcast, but there's no skills in it. Basically, you have your 6 attributes and everything goes off of those. They've done away with all of that. So it just basically, instead like with these ones, you've got climbing, swimming, throwing. It gives you the sense of, okay, what are you doing and what skill do you need to roll in order to do that? But you don't have that in this other system, which is what I like. I like that they're going that way with this one. Like if you ever play that game, you'll see what I'm talking about. But it's nice to see them condense it, because if you have, it's just less stuff for you to remember what you want your player to do. You know what I mean? Like when you're calling a shot, give me an X roll. If you have only 10 things to pull from instead of 15 or 20, it just makes everything sort of flow and become quicker. So like Paris said, I'm hoping they can condense more of them together.
I'm a bit torn about the change, because what this actually does is sort of break a convention we had in the rules up until now, and that was that combat skills just stand alone. So what they now did is they integrated a combat skill, throwing, with 2 non-combat skills, which isn't all that bad in itself. They just have to word certain edges differently, because there would be combat edges that modify throwing or ranged attack stuff, and they just have to say, yeah, that now afflicts athletics when using throwing. So it's mostly a cosmetic change, but it does change something that didn't exist before. So yeah, that's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. Like I said, climbing, swimming together, I've got no problem. It's putting throwing in there, which is an attack skill that, plus athletics is now, like I said, used for grappling. So another sort of combat method that can be used for that. And Of course, the foot chase, that type of thing, probably could be used for, I don't know, gliding if you got a hand glider, or parachuting. So it's got lots of use to it. It's a, like I said, I'm thinking it's going to be the go-to skill that everybody's going to put at least 1 point. 1 point in that, to have a D4 at least in athletics, and give you an option to throw rocks or Molotov cocktails at people.
Is that such a bad thing? I mean, if like the concept that I'd have D4 -2 to throw a rock, what I do, throw it backwards. That anyone could throw a rock, So if you do put D4 in there, happy days. But what it does mean is your fighter, who then has to try and keep up with grappling or whatever the case may be, he's going to have to, or she is going to have to move some points over to that side, and maybe we won't see these uber strongmen straight out of the gates. Maybe this will actually maybe balance out a few things, especially with novice characters.
True, unless you take the martial artist's edge. In that case, you can actually use fighting for grappling. That's one of the, little rules in there for grappling. So,
but he won't be able to throw his ninja stars.
Yeah.
I think that one.
You were talking about the other one, lock picking becomes thievery. I know I've seen, like I said, in Accursed, I think they mix stealth and lock picking, and it becomes subterfuge. But in this one, it's called thievery, and that one I actually like, because I know a lot of people, and including myself, when I run the game, lockpicking has a lot more uses than just picking a lock, because I see it as fine manipulation, dexterous manipulation. So it could be to, disarm bombs, or hotwire a car, that type of thing. So I kind of like that, where now you can do sleight of hand with it, and bunch of different things, maybe for tricks and that type of thing. What do you think, Paris? Or no?
Well, with what you said with hotwiring a car, that kind of intrudes into the territory that was held by repair up until now. So there's going to be a bit of an overlap over what the two skills can do, which I personally think isn't a bad thing. It gives you the possibility to really play a thief, and the things you can do as a thief, you don't have to put points into repair, which would make you a dwarf mechanic. So you can just focus on
stealth.
being a thief. Yeah.
Or stealth, because for pickpocket, usually I'd use something like stealth, because you're trying not to be, seen when you do that, and noticed. So, but now it becomes one catch-all skill for the thieves. I like it.
My opinion on this, I think they're just dipping their toe in the water. They've given us a couple of things, see how the community would react, because really the thievery skill they've added, that's not so much the meshing of a couple of skills. That's one skill, and then they've added new ones to it to give it a broader base and make it. I think repair will go down that track as well. Maybe it's just the word, but whenever a character builds something or designs something, they have to roll a repair skill. That always never sat right with me. So there might be, you never know, there might be engineering coming up, and that'll cover a whole bunch of things. I think actually what they may do is actually do some more focus on specialization. So if we want someone that's better at throwing daggers, or someone that's better at pickpocketing or something, you'll get specializations under that heading now. Maybe
or edges.
Or edges. Yeah, or edges, yeah.
That's the way I would do it. I mean, that's the way I look at it with edges, is that they help you specialize in certain skills without having to use the specializations skills, which I've never used. So
nice.
Yeah, they feel pretty clumsy in the current system.
Can you say dexterous manipulation slowly for me, Eric? That was kind of sexy.
I knew you would go there.
It's funny that you don't like climbing, swimming, and throwing together, and I get why. Because it's kind of like having, let's say, like chivalry, whatever a skill would be to like dress fine, like how to dress, and then nose picking, if that makes sense. Like throwing just doesn't seem to go in that category, because when it comes to the lock picking, you're fine with adding all of those skills into thievery, but I think the reason that you're fine with it is because it just feels right. Like you just throw everything into one pool, call it thievery, and just be done with it. You're talking about specialization and stuff like that, but we actually do already have specialization in the form of knowledge blank. So if your thief wanted to be like super good at pick and locks, I would let my thief take knowledge lock picks or locks and use that skill to roll against a lock, as opposed to just the old school lock picking, or knowledge stealth, or something along those lines, if they wanted to be super good at it. But I'm with the new rules, I don't know how that would fall into play. It would probably be a completely unnecessary step if your thievery skill was higher than your knowledge lock picking skill. It would be pointless.
So when I look at the athletic skill, I can't help but think of like the ancient Olympics, which was, pretty much running and throwing. So that sort of all comes under athletics. I realize it's got climbing and swimming, but they're really basic human actions when you think about it: climbing, swimming, and throwing. So I personally have no problems it being lumped into one thing, even as a combat skill with throwing. I don't think you can throw anything, though, that's going to create as much damage as a bow or a gun or even a longsword.
A grenade.
Well, yeah. But again, the grenade is its area of effect. You can't just sort of subtly throw one of those down a corridor and everything's fine. You know what I mean? There's consequences to that.
Right. No, and I see there in your notes you're proposing more combos, more skill combos. Let's look at those.
Yeah, that was because it's interesting you said edges. I personally sort of sit in the camp that I don't think there should be any skills in Savage Worlds. I think everything should run through traits and edges. But if I did have to have skills, and I'm just looking at some possibilities along the line of, they're just dipping their toe. I was looking at things like you could combine investigation, streetwise, and knowledge law, and you could call that detecting, or being a detective. Persuasion, knowledge, religion, or occult, and healing. That could be, ministering as a priest or a cleric. Survival, tracking, and notice. You could bundle that up into ranging or outdoorsman, as survival and tracking as outdoorsman. Actually, that note about gambling was interesting. I was thinking about that one after I read it. That's I'll leave that to you anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess what you're suggesting would work well, I think, for one setting. Let's say you got your setting, and because I know you simplify a lot of the rules for your groups, and like making it one skill for the priest or the cleric or whatever, for being good at what he does. That makes sense. That kind of reminds me of Barbarians of Lemuria, where you don't take skills. What you do, you pick 4 professions, and everything that has to do with that profession, you gain a bonus. So let's say you could be, thief, merchant, sailor, and priest. So every time you want to do something, if what you're trying to do fits with one of your professions, that becomes kind of your skill where you get a bonus for it. So that would make sense in that context. But for the core rules, to make a skill that's called, would you call it ministering? I don't know. If you play in a more modern or sci-fi, it just doesn't feel right for the theme, I think.
Well, that's the beauty of Savage Worlds, is that you can cut and paste as you see fit. I guess, yeah, you actually make a very valid point there, because what they'll need to do with black is have a core skeleton that we attach everything to. So yeah, I guess within my fantasy setting, having the ranging skill, which covered those three other things, would be fine. But as you said, would that work in ETU? Well, probably not. How many rangers are running around? As in not Texas Rangers. So
Oh,
yeah,
but actually, survival and tracking together, that's one combo I'm not sure why it hasn't happened yet, because I think it's part of being an outdoorsman. You know, you can read nature and you know how to follow tracks, and because tracking isn't used all that much, I don't think survival is used much more.
So would you still think then that, for instance, let's say you take an arcane background, right? And then usually you have to take knowledge arcana, right? Isn't one implied in the other? Do you really need to be spending points in knowledge arcana? I mean, is it the fantasy companion? You got to have D10 in knowledge arcana to get a familiar, as well as your arcane background. It just seems, it's a lot of waste of points when you think about it.
Yeah, it just seems to be a speed bump.
It's interesting with the edges, because I was just going to say, it's interesting with the edges, like you're saying, because you can take professional edges and they're going to have to rework all of these. Like, you've got the assassin, the investigator, jack of all trades. Let's talk about the thief, for example. The thief gets +2 climbing, lockpick, and stealth. If you start combining these things together, I guess they're going to have to rewrite what all of these professional edges are going to, how they're going to affect your gameplay, which is rather interesting too. So I'm assuming we're going to get a whole new professional edges section out of the Savage Black edition as well.
Yeah, they would need rework, but usually like in Accursed, because they comboed some skills, they just say when an edge references one of those skills, just apply it to the new skill instead. So I don't think it's going to be a big rework, but they're definitely going to get reworded to fit better. Why not gambling with thievery?
Yeah,
that's one skill that never gets used. I mean, I'm playtesting Wise Guys right now, which is a setting taking place in Las Vegas with criminals, where that skill gets used more. But other than that, unless you're going to, you don't really gamble for fun, right? You're usually trying to cheat or make money or something, right?
Yeah. But
I'm not really thinking that gambling is exclusively the area of cheating or using some kind of illegal maneuver to gain an edge. The core idea of gambling is just really knowing the rules, being able to read other players at the table, of course, depending on the game you're playing. And a very small part of it only is where you actually know how to cheat and get away with it. So I can kind of understand why they didn't roll it into thievery, although I agree it's a skill that sees very little use outside of either people
Deadlands
doing Deadlands. Or I was going to say outside people doing the method acting thing and just building a character around it. But outside of specialized settings where gambling is a big part of the world, you basically never see it used.
But why? Why do we need to see two things? Why do we need to see gambling more in games? Like, as you said, if it's not a core part of the setting, it would rarely come up anyway. And I think you could be a great thief and a gambler. So I'm not sure I'd want to, wrap that in. You might steal a great diamond, but then lose it tomorrow, which means in a card game, and then have to go out and steal again. You know what I mean? It's I'd probably, if I had to link it with something, I'd maybe link it with Streetwise. But other than that, no, for me personally, no. I think gambling's probably one that needs to be on its own, and it's almost one of those setting skills, depending on the setting again, unless, as Manuel said, unless someone wants to make a gambler for whatever reason in another setting. It's not one that we've particularly worried about, to be honest.
I think
it's basically leftover from Deadlands.
Yeah, I don't think that you guys are looking at gambling in the proper light. Like you sort of keep bringing gambling up as if you guys are sitting around a table playing cards, but it can be used in so many more aspects. Like you could literally walk up to a crime lord or whatever and gamble pretty much anything you want. You know, like you let little Tommy Two Thumbs go. And I'll flip you heads or tails. And if you let Tommy Two Thumbs go, I'll go kill so and so for you. It doesn't have to be an actual card game. It's used in a lot more settings in a lot more ways than I think you guys are just saying sitting down and just playing Deadlands. You basically you can gamble anytime you're trying to gain favor or maybe manipulate somebody. You could use the gambling skill. It's one of those skills. Like thievery, where you're picking a lock, you're doing something to just to get by, to get on to the next step of the adventure. Gambling isn't really like that, in my opinion. Anyway, the way I look at it is like the reason that I think they're keeping it separate is because I think it mechanically feels like something else in the game. You're gambling to gain something from somebody. It's almost like persuading in that sense. But it also can be used at the same time to try and get maybe more money or favor from somebody. Like it's a manipulation tool as well. Gambling has a lot to it.
Interpretation of it, but it's not how it's spelled out in the book. That's what I'm saying. The way it's spelled out in the book is you play cards and whoever rolls the highest wins. It's just laid out like that. Of course, you can use it however you want, but rules is written that's not what it's used for.
Yeah, what you just described, Gary, that is a perfect example of trappings in a manner of just different uses of the persuasion skill and the connected edges. Gambling, as it is written and as it seems to be intended, is you sit down to make money. It doesn't have to be a card game. Could be that you're spinning the roulette wheel or something, and just know when and how to bet on that. Even though, of course, roulette is a lot more luck than anything else. But yeah, still, that's what the core rulebook version of gambling is used for. And anytime you want to talk somebody into something or out of something, that's the persuasion skill.
Yeah, I feel that's why they've dipped their toe with athletics. There's as I said before, you've got repair that covers so many things, and then you've got like 2 or 3 skills that sort of ambiguous and they can sort of overlap each other, and you're just not sure where to put your points with some of them. So I think maybe, hopefully, in Black, that's what they're looking to tighten up.
Yeah, maybe. Also, would be interesting to see if they, maybe not in Savage Worlds Black, but in the edition after that, if they combine even more skills into broader categories, if they're going to reduce the amount of skill points you get at character creation.
All right, the next one, a new skill this time, performance or perform. Performance. I kind of like perform better, but I guess they call it performance. I don't know. I read the description, and then I look at persuasion, and it's basically the same thing, just the wording is a bit different, where performance says that it's to sway a crowd, whereas persuasion said it's to sway others. So really I see that it's requested a lot from people to actually have a skill for that, but when you perform in front of a crowd, what's your intent? Your intent is to change their reaction, which to me, that's for persuasion. That's what persuasion is for. So what kind of use in the game can you see from having the performance skill in there?
Well, the way I'm reading it in the Flash Gordon book, performance pertains to things like singing, dancing, playing instruments, and entertaining a crowd. So I'm not sure it sits in the same category as persuasion from the way I read it, but I could be reading it wrong. To me, to me, I can see it being used for any sort of bard character. I could see it being used in I can see it being used in ETU if you've got a drama student or a music student. I could see it being used in a spy game if the undercover operative has to pretend to be a cellist or a ballerina or something like that, or they're doing the Matahari thing and distracting the bad guy with suggestive dancing while another character's off behind the scenes trying to get through the safe behind the painting, that kind of thing. So I could see that as being part of a dramatic task or that kind of thing.
Yeah, but what's the intent of doing this? I mean, in the end, what you want is that people react more favorably to what you're doing, isn't it? You want them to believe that you're a good dancer. You want them to believe that you're a good musician. Right? I mean, if I'm going to play a song to you, and I'm not going to do it, Gary, sorry, but if I'm going to play a song to Paris, maybe right now he's, I don't know, indifferent. And after I play the song, he's friendly because he liked my song. To me, that's persuasion. The way I see performance right now, maybe like in Deadlands Noir, is that you can earn money from performing like a street performer. I don't know. What do you think, Gary? There's some skills that are just a waste of time. And if the intent is to sway or split the difference between crowds or others, there's no use for this skill. So until they come out with sort of like a defined set of rules or intent of what this skill is going to do, it's a tough one because, like, you're right. I mean, even persuasion, when you read it in the book, it's the ability to convince others to do what you want them to do. Now, you can take that as one person or multiple people because it does say others. So, yeah.
I don't see performance in the same vein as persuasion. If anything, persuasion is trying to convince someone of something. Performance is trying to distract someone or entertain someone. So I actually see a clear distinction between the two. I'm actually know that if I was at a game table with you guys right now and we all had performance on our sheets, we'd all be looking to see who had the lowest performance so we could take the piss out of them because they couldn't perform well. But no, look, I see performance as, because there's currently no skill. You'd have to take a knowledge skill if you were a ballerina, or a knowledge skill if you were a musician or a singer or whatever the case may be. So in my mind, performance is actually a valid skill. It's a good one to put in there. I'm not sure. I haven't played Flash Gordon, so I don't know if it came up in your game at all. I'm assuming it had something specific for him to write it in.
It didn't, but you just brought up knowledge skills. So what would be the advantage of having performance over knowledge violin, for instance?
Because I think this is another catch-all where it does everything: sing, dance, play instruments. You basically wing it. Now, there's a lot of people that can sing and play an instrument. Would you want them to take knowledge singing and knowledge instrument to do both, or just perform?
But why do you need a different skill for that? If the intent is to distract someone, that's a smarts trick. You don't really need a skill for that. You may want a skill for it if you're planning to introduce edges, to be able to really specialize in all of that. But if the intent is just distracting either a single person or a lot of persons, that's a smarts trick. That's already in the book. And if it's just about entertaining, do you really need a rule for that? And if so, then it's about the reaction table, and that's already covered by persuasion, which just has your trapping of I'm really good at playing the violin, and I hope you guys all like it.
Yeah, I just reread the description for the skill, and I think Paris brought some good here where in the description, it doesn't say that you have to pick a specialization for it, meaning you could, with that skill, you could do both well, you could do all of them. You could do dancing, you could do singing, and you don't have to pick a specialization unless, I don't know, I read it wrong, or they intend to, reword that so that you actually have to pick what you're performing.
So who's excited to back the new Kickstarter, Savage America's Got Talent?
Right. Performance is such a flaky one, because what if, you know what I mean? Like you have people that can play the guitar really well and can't sing worth a shit, or they can, sing really well and can't play an instrument. So if somebody was to take the performance skill and they want to go up on stage in one round, they're telling me they want to play this guitar and use their performance skill, and then maybe later on they're like, oh, I'm going to sing a song because I left my guitar somewhere and I want to use my performance skill. I'm going to be like, just hold it, pump the brakes here for a second. What actual skills do you have that you're attributing to your performance? Because
don't skills get trapped just like powers?
So do they?
If I wanted to be a country singer, my character's a country singer, I would say my performance is trapped in banjo and singing like a yokel, you know what I mean? And then let's say then I have to go into a piano contest. Well, the GM's going to go, well, you said you're a country singer. You didn't say anything about pianos. You're at a major disadvantage. You'll get minuses. But you still understand music. You can still read sheet music, so you still get a chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're going to have to define what your performance skill is right out of the gate, so that it doesn't become such a broad spectrum. Because, man, I'd be up there, dances with dong that'd be my skill.
I knew you'd go there. I was thinking in my head, I bet you Gary goes puppetry of the penis or something like that. Look what you did.
I had to get it in somewhere.
To all of that, I'm going to bring in existing skills like fighting and shooting, because shooting gives you everything from a 38 Derringer over to a composite bow over to a rocket launcher. And nobody's talking about having to specialize in that. If you're playing a student at ETU with a shooting of D6 by the book, not saying that's how people handle it in their games, but by the book, which is what we're discussing, he could pick up his daddy's shotgun and waste some spirits with rock salt in it, and then go over to the military compound near the campus, pick up a rocket launcher and waste a tank. And both times he would be rolling a D6. So why the need to split that up now with the performance skill?
Very funny that you bring that up, because it is so true. Like, this is really based a lot on how we feel about the game. Not so much like logically what makes sense, but more about like how you feel about how things should be. And that might be DM to DM, but I agree with what you're saying. I like that they have shooting as your example. I like that it's a broad spectrum, because now there's, you don't need to know all of these shooting rocket launchers, shooting small pistols, shooting medium-sized pistols. Do you know what I mean? Like, I like that about Savage Worlds, that there's one shooting skill. But I don't like the idea that performance breaks down into, you can play a guitar, tap dance, sing a song, put on a dong puppet performance or something along those lines. But you know what I mean?
But with shooting, like, let's say you were playing a Traveller style game, right? And you rock up to a low-tech world or a primitive world, right? And the guys are running around there with bows and arrows, which uses shooting. But then one of them picks up, a pulse cannon or a pulse rifle. You as the GM wouldn't go, oh, those dice are the same. Or the dice might be the same, but there's going to be a huge penalty involved, right? So performance would be the same. If you've trapped it as, I do only harmonicas and mouth harps, and then they go, rightio, here's an oboe, right? You're going to get major penalties to play an oboe, and each GM will decide that as they play. That's something a bit later on we talk about. Is I'm hoping in this new edition they give more. We don't want hard and fast rules in Savage Worlds. We want that fluidity, but we really need to be putting in, some suggestions of common sense. Like, as you said, shooting covers everything in the game, right? But a crossbowman from Middle Ages cannot pick up, a Winchester rifle and get it straight away. He's going to have major issues with how to load it, how to cock it, and then when he fires it, he's going to get knocked on his ass. So there's going to be, while his shooting skill might be 8 with a crossbow, it's not going to be the same with a rifle, but you'll just decide that as the game pans out.
Sure, but that is setting specific, and the core rulebook is not going to be setting specific. It's just going to give you the baseline for the rules.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I mean, those core skeleton rules, and this is one of the problems I had when I first started playing Savage Worlds, is I kept going to the core rules thinking these were hard and fast rules. It was only when I actually let go of the reins and realized that this is more of a suggestion. Here's the core skeleton, but you've really got to put your own meat on it and your own interpretation of things per setting, and that changes between, some things stay the same between settings, other things change. Something that I do in ETU, I wouldn't do in the fantasy game, and vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. I absolutely agree with what you're saying. I'm just saying that is what should be written in the settings if they are using the skill. They should give suggestions in the setting. In the core rulebook, you don't need to give that, because the core rulebook simply defines the baseline, as in there is a performance skill. And how that is used in the specific setting you are playing is up to the setting to define, and not the core rulebook. So the way performance is written in Flash Gordon, that is perfectly fine, in my opinion, for Savage Worlds Black. If we would need the skill at all, which I'm not convinced about, but yeah.
No, fair call. Yeah, I like the way it's written, and it's sort of very open-ended, and then it's just left up to the GM and the players to discuss amongst themselves how that relates, or how it's played out at the table.
Yeah, exactly.
So this concludes the first part of our look at Savage Black. So this was the skills, and in the next 2 episodes, we'll be looking at things like the new states, combat options, and the optional rules. So stay tuned. But for now, listen to Gary with his contact info. And, of course, the Patreon jingle.
Sure. You want me to roll this bad boy out? You can email us at thewildeye@gmail.com. Catch us over at the Google Pluses at the Wild Eye Podcast. We are under the Nerds International Community header, I'm pretty sure. That's where you can find us. Also, you can check us out at Twitter. At least you can talk to Eric on Twitter anyway, at the Wild Eye. You can send him some sweet hairy man items, possibly. Maybe? I see him smiling, so just do it. We have a Patreon. www.patreon.com/thewildeye. Drop us $1. We'll send you some more dong jokes, mention your name in the show, throw you into our actual place. And if you, we're going to put in a new support level where Eric he'll permanent marker your name on his chest and send you a picture.
Well, the thing, Gary, is you can fit a lot more names on your chest. Maybe you should do it.
Fit them all. And we're now on YouTube. What is our YouTube channel? Why did you put this link in the contact info and not have a link there? Just look us up at the Wild Eye on YouTube.
Sean Richard, yeah. Who's the next guy? Conrad Erasmus, Sovia, Nobtown, Peter Adams, John Peterson, Manuel Sands, Jason Connolly, Gubu, or Gus Bus. Which one is it? Who cares? Because the next one is Gil Dashard, Andy Hall, Christopher Gray, Tony Asmodeus, Owen Lee, David. It just says David. Who cares? James Clark, Henry Chalmers, David. There's another one. Eli Kurtz, Matthew J, Hanson, Murder Hobo, John Steve, Pure Mongol, and of course the best. He's better than the rest. His name is Bubbles.
The Wild Die Podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by Pinnacle Entertainment Group or official Pinnacle licensees. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of the respected owners. All music and artwork is used with permission of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Wild Die Podcast.